the show the best I can. I'm also managing personalities and teaching some baby executive how to give notes. No offense to anyone who might be hey, if you write notes like this to our editors, they might just get up and leave. We might want to stop after you say the music isn't working for me, and don't write maybe who put this shitty music in here. Maybe leave that part off. So my responsibility is to keep the morale going, keep the network happy, keep the production company happy, and I would say that that's the part I like least is the politicking. But
what do you like most about it?
Storytelling. I am a storyteller. That's what I like doing. That's what I love doing. I want to make it better. I want to make it more interesting. I want to make people cry. I want to make people laugh. I want to make people feel like, oh shit, what's going to happen next?
Nice.
Yeah, can I piggyback off of that?
Piggy all you want.
No, I'm so glad you brought that up because we have some awesome producers on our show, and giving notes, like there really is an art to it, so I appreciate you saying that. Because, again, I just got promoted to editor last season, so this is my second year as an editor on the show. And what I noticed in particular this year is that being an editor is a really negative job. Meaning, you get notes back. Your job is to get notes, and if you get a note, it's because something is not quite as great as it can be. So I always expect a kid to get notes, but when you get them every single, and we tape 190 shows per season, we're working 44 weeks out of the year, so I noticed this year, like, oh dang, like I get a lot of notes, and for some reason, it's hitting me this year. And then just last week, I got a note from our executive producer, Mike Richards, and it was like a show, and I had only 3 notes on it, and then a comment at the end, great editing. And it seemed so small. It was like 2 words. But it meant so much. And even my post AD, when I came in the next day, she was like, did you see that email from Mike? So I appreciate you as an executive producer caring about how people give notes, because it does make a difference.
I think it's a big part of this side of the industry anyway. You kind of have to be a little bit of like a psychologist, a little bit of a mediator. I mean, especially editors and AEs, we're usually working with producers physically in the room with us. Maybe not on Ninja so much, but they're really involved, and you're dealing with a lot of personalities and a lot of opinions. Yeah, so I appreciate that as well. It's nice to hear someone say that from the top. Now, Biagio, you and your wife, have a very unique situation in that you, like you said, you own the company, you can cut your own pitch tapes, you go out to the field, shoot, conduct interviews, you bring it home, you edit, do VFX. All that is way more than I've ever heard any co-EP doing. How did you get to that point? What?
So I'm a big nerd, but my wife married me anyway, thank God. When we were, it actually goes back to like our 3rd day of school at UCLA. I know it sounds crazy, but I met my wife and she said, I'm convinced the only way to make it in this business is to produce your own projects. And I immediately started making wedding plans. I was like, all right, this is the way this is my life. It took her a while to come around, but we're here 20 years later, so it worked out. And that was really our thing. We were like, listen, if we're going to make a splash now, we felt like we had to put our money where our mouth was. And we only had a little bit of money, but we had very big mouths. So we just basically started making stuff. And really, we built our career and our company on Adobe After Effects, Final Cut Pro, and great storytelling. And my wife is a great storyteller. And I would do a lot of the editing, and we would do a lot of the directing together. And every single project that we made, we felt like we looked like stuff that was on TV. But nobody knew who we were. I'm from Cleveland. My wife is from Belgium. We didn't know anybody in Hollywood. So it was like just trying to even get meetings. Back then it was a little easier to lie, right? There was no Facebook, there was no YouTube, there was no Twitter. So it'd be like, we're working with someone at Endeavor. He said we should give you a call. Whatever it would take to get through the door. When we got through the door, though, we would show our work. And they would be like, you did all of this, just the 2 of you? And a weird thing would happen. They would be really excited because they felt like maybe they could take our pitch tape and team up with us. and go out and have an easy pitch because it was ready to go. On the other hand, they had no idea what to do with us because we didn't have a single credit on our resume. So it was a very sort of bizarre upbringing, and with every new show idea and every new pitch tape, we would just learn a new skill. So, okay, now we're going to learn how to use Cinema 4D. Now we're going to learn how to use, smart image-based lighting to do realistic CG lighting. Whatever it was that we thought would be a cool skill that would help us and maybe open us up to another genre. So that's kind of like the weird route that we took. Eventually, we jumped in as producer-directors on a show called Caesars 24/7. For a company called 44 Blue, and basically the deal they had made with us is said, listen, we have all this footage we shot, why don't you guys take a crack at the sizzle reel, because they've seen some of our other tapes, and if it goes, we'll hire you as producers on the show. And we're like, great. So we literally re-edited all our footage, and we borrowed some new footage, back then from the Los Angeles Public Library, that's how long ago this tape was cut, and got the show picked up, and that was our first gig. And then from there, we just kept pitching shows until eventually we got third-party approved. Also, we were showrunners in two very separate ends of the industry. So we were showrunners on Beauty and the Geek. Our host was actually Mike Richards. And at the same time, we were doing Verite docs for RJ Color. So it allowed us to establish two very different sets of clients so we could sort of build our genres over here, and never the twain shall meet. Now everybody knows, but back then it was good to sort of keep it separate because we didn't get pigeonholed that way.
Nice. Well, that brings up a good point too about pigeonholing. So that we've all seen job postings that ask for editors or producers or whatever, specifically with must-have, Bravo experience, paranormal experience, must-have ghost pawn shop experience. Actually, the Bravo. Let me just say, since I have this platform. The only one of those that really makes sense is the Bravo one. And I think anyone who's cut a Bravo show can attest to it, that it's an entirely different beast. And they want people, what they're saying is, we want people who've worked on other Bravo shows and have been through the abusive Bravo ringer. That's exactly what they're saying.
You want to talk about
Even
negative
assists
notes?
too. I got a couple of Bravo shows because I've worked on other Bravo shows. So I even see the same listings for assists.
Yeah.
that I worked on It's a Red World and
Yeah.
Definitely Ever After. So they
Yeah.
want to make sure you know their format.
Right. They want people who have shell-shocked enough to deal with, to know that those notes are coming and that they're going to be batshit crazy. So
Well,
if you...
no,
Mary, are they not crazy?
I don't know that they're crazy. I will just say they like to micromanage the story.
Sure.
I will put it that way. They really like to see several evolutions of a scene and then kind of pick the best one from there.
Right.
So that network especially, you've got to be really malleable with the material and have fresh eyes every time you approach or cut that scene. So I think that's what they're looking for, as well as being able to handle a lot of negative notes. They're a network especially that when I've had executive producers rewrite the notes for me before they've gotten to me because they've taken out all of the extra little bitterness that's in there and gotten to like, what's the meat of what they're trying to say? And let's just focus on that, which I, again, appreciate. Because then I go in with, clear-headed and like, okay, I can tackle this challenge as opposed to being like really abused and beat up. So
And
that helps.
one of the things that I noticed when I was an assistant editor for reality television is how many note passes there is, but that it actually makes the show better. I remember my first time seeing an editor's rough cut, and I was like, this is great. And then they came back with all of these notes, and I'm like, how is there even one note? But then it actually made the show better. So it's many times as we may dislike a note or something like that. Once you try it, I feel that it helps the whole process. When you see how it's evolved from the rough cut to the locked cut, it's just amazing.
Just try it. I think it's a good bit of advice. Just try it. Don't say no if you're in that position. You really just shouldn't say no, that can't be done. Say, hey, if you don't agree with it, you don't agree with it, but give it a shot. You
I
never
do
know.
a lot of notes I don't agree with. But I kick ass trying to do them though, and because I'm making a product for clients. This isn't my scene, it's not my show. I don't take that kind of ownership over my material. I mean, I'm proud of the work I do, but I'm trying to make someone else's vision come to life. It's not my story, it's not my vision, it's my client's vision.
Right. I think being malleable is a really important trait in this business, being adaptable and just kind of going with the flow.
Oh,
Like you say, we are making, at the end of the day, we are making a product for somebody else, right? We are essentially the distraction between commercials. And so, really, you know, you could disagree with it all you want, but it's not your show. It's NBC's show, or it's Bravo's show, or it's your own show.
It's never our own show. Unless you pay for it 100% yourself. Our documentary was our documentary. That's the only thing that's ever been ours, top to bottom, because we paid for it.
But going back to the issue of pigeonholing, like where all this started, it seems to be like it's very easy to be pigeonholed. You've done game shows, so that's all you could do. You've done reality, that's obviously all you could do. How do you, this is open to anybody, how do you guys combat that type of, you know, that type of stereotyping?
I would say you have to keep your resume as diverse as humanly possible. I think I was doing a lot of competition elimination shows early in my career, and then I remember having a meeting actually at Murray, and they said, have you ever done a house reality show? And I said, well, there's really only one house reality show on right now, Big Brother. So are you asking me, have I done Big Brother? Because I have not done Big Brother. But I'm a storyteller. And people just want to hear that you check off some kind of box. And so I set out and I thought, I'm going to go do a house reality show. I'm going to find some kind of house reality show, whether it's Big Brother or what, so I can get that experience. Then I met with someone and they said, do you have dating show experience? And I said, I don't have dating show experience. So I went and got dating show experience. Figured out a way, you know, to get those experiences. And I think the same way, if I take a job where I'm mostly focused on the field or mostly focused on post, the next job I try to take either is the exact opposite, post or field. Because if you try to do too many jobs in a row that are similar, they will box you in. I think my last couple of shows, even though I've been bouncing field post, I've also done several docu-soaps in a row. But now I'm trying to push past docu-soaps and go back and do more formatted shows again. But I think it's really important to constantly change your resume, change your experience.
so to do that, I would follow an executive producer like Jen, because once she's worked with you, I mean, this is how it's happened for me where I've crossed genres. Once I've worked with someone like Jen, she knows, oh, okay, she's a great editor, she can handle anything I throw at her, because she's worked with me already. So that's how I've been able to kind of jump around from genres, from competition reality to docu-soap, whatever.
I also think the great thing that Jen does is, like, you brand yourself as a storyteller. Production companies want storytellers. I honestly don't care if you've never done a dating show, if you're a great storyteller and you come in with an angle and you're like, listen, I'd like to try it like this. At least at our company, we would rather hire a creative person who's coming in with ideas than someone whose resume checks a lot of boxes. The biggest problem we have today with hiring, and this also kind of goes to pigeonholing, is honestly you just can't trust resumes anymore. And to a certain extent, it's even hard for us to trust recommendations. You don't know until you get in the room with someone, until you work together, if it's going to work out. So it's really important in that meeting to try and present why you think you'd be right. That said, a lot of times when you're just starting out, you don't have any of that stuff to show, right? And I think a really great piece of advice, there's a book that just came out, it's called The Freelance Manifesto by Joey Kornman. He runs a site called, the name is School of Motion, which is mainly aimed at motion graphics pieces, but it's a book about getting freelance work. And his big advice for people who are worried about getting pigeonholed is you have to do the work you want to do before you get paid to do it. In other words, if you want to be cutting promos, there's no reason why you can't go cut together a promo sizzle reel right now. Like, you can go find raw footage and show that you can do that type of work. And in a lot of ways, that's the only way we've been able to work in multiple genres, because when we walk into A&E, it's very different than walking into CNN, and we need to show them a tape that proves that we get what they're going for at any given moment. And we constantly have to reprove ourselves that way. And the way we do that is by spending our money creating pitch tapes. But whatever area of the industry you're in, you just have to decide how you're going to create that work that's going to prove you have what it takes to work where you want to.
Hey, can I jump in on that a little
You
bit?
can jump in a little bit.
I think it's the same with Assist as well. When I was starting out, I did a lot of like Discovery Channel, History Channel shows, which is dealing with tons of like stock footage and master footage. And I eventually leaped into more competition shows like American Ninja Warrior and The Bachelor. But I said, you could be your biggest cheerleader. That's in an interview. they know that if I'm dealing with a lot of master footage, it's going to be similar to dealing with a lot of footage with competition show. Just, I think most post soups want to know if you're a team player, if you're a likable person, will you fit in well with this team? You know, and they're willing to, I guess, help with the curve to get you on board with, you know, with how their show goes about.
Right. Now, Sean, you have a smile that you can see from space. Right? There it is. There it is.
Believe it or not, I am a New Yorker. Who lives in LA.
So am I. We talked a lot about personality and kind of how important that is. Aside from the technical aspects, how do you think that's helped you, just kind of being who you are? Do you consciously, you know, revamp your social media? Like, how aware are you of all this personality stuff? And does that help you? It seems like it's helped you.
It has tremendously. I have revamped my social media. I try to keep personal comments off my Facebook and Instagram because honestly, if people don't know you, they don't know if you're a good or a bad person. If you're saying a bunch of negative things, you know, we all have like positive and negative thoughts about whatever range of topics, but you have to realize that there are employers and other friends, other people you work with, and they want to know, like, the next show you jump onto is this person cool, is this person hardworking, or they're negative, or they're downer? So, you know, I try to just be my biggest cheerleader, like, hey, I'm working on this, hey, I hung out with my mom this day, just positivity, you know, just keep that up, and just show, like, I guess the best parts of yourself, because it's more about team effort. Are you a great fit? Will you be a part of this team? Will you be there, you know, pushing during those long hours at night? Or if you're working during the day, that's what's the most important.
Can I just comment really quickly?
Yes.
Employers look at your Facebook. They do. So if you're posting like weird pictures or things that are incredibly opinionated one way or the other, you just don't know who's looking. So I would encourage people to monitor their social media or make it private. I think that's really important what Sean was saying.
I will say, I do look at people's social media. I've actually hired people off of Twitter. Actually, one of our first lead AEs I hired off of Twitter because he was answering questions no one else could. And I was like, hey, you want to come in and interview for a job? So I try not to get turned off by people's political opinions one way or the other, or their rants, because I know that people will use social media that way. But I do look to see, like, are they sharing stuff about the industry as well? Are they making smart points? Are they saying things I'm like, oh, this person is really bright? And like I said, we have hired people off of social media that I've met that way because, you know, I could tell that they were committed enough to their craft to want to share what they knew. And I love people like that. So that's one way we look at social media.
One more point I'd like to make about social media is that, especially Facebook friends of mine, I've had employers call or they say, oh, hey, I noticed that you know someone, you're friends on Facebook, what can you tell me about her? And I might not be someone they even put as a reference. So be aware of that too.
Wow.
Your friend's connection, you know, will reflect that, and so those kind of calls will happen.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's happened to me quite a few
Really?
times. Like, oh, I see you know so-and-so, have you worked with them on this show, that show? I'm like, yes, I have. And, you know, they'll actually speak with that person beforehand, before they even contact me. So, yeah, it's amazing.
I forgot I wanted to mention one other thing. An editor once posted a note they didn't like that I had given them on Facebook, and we were Facebook friends. I walked into the day and talked to her about it. It was awesome.
It's like, it's 101, guys. Everyone knows you're supposed to put it on Twitter.
Usually with technical stuff, I keep it in certain forms because, you know, also my family and other friends outside the industry are also on the same
Right.
Facebook.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So speaking on that, Jen and Biagio in particular, but open to everybody, what do you guys look for in people? What do you think are the qualities necessary to work in, specifically in Unscripted?
Want to go first?
Sure, I'll be. Basically, I like pleasant people, and it sounds really lame, but the older I get, the more I would rather work with someone who is really nice and slightly less talented, because the show's still going to come out great, and it's going to be a much better experience. I mean, production, post-production, you're in the trenches. The hours are long. There's a lot of pressure. The network will give notes sometimes that are a little outrageous. You have to sanitize them. You have to, you're doing all these different things. And if someone isn't pleasant to work with, it makes it horrible. That said, in terms of editors specifically, I like to hire editors who think of themselves as storytellers and filmmakers first. I love editors that have interest in other areas of filmmaking. So what always turns me on is if I get a cover letter from somebody and they're like, hey, you know, I see you posted this job, you know, I've done A, B, and C similar to that, these are my skills. Also, you know, I think part of what helps me be an editor is I've done a lot of shooting or I've done a lot of writing, and I like to use those skills to enhance my edit. I love that. I don't automatically go, oh, this person secretly wants to be a writer. I think this is someone who's using other filmmaking skills to make them a better editor. So I like to see that.
And just jumping off of that, television is a collaborative process. So I want someone who brings something to that process. I don't want to just say, it's like this and this and this. That's boring. We all are trying to make the best product possible, and making that best product is hearing lots of different opinions and melding into something that I wouldn't have thought of on my own. And so I need people that are willing to, put their ideas out there, however wacky, and I need people that also, when they hear my ideas, are willing to help incorporate those or add on to those things. And I think definitely pleasant attitude, hardworking, because at the end of the day, if you're making my life easier, I'm taking you on every single show I do. Truly.
Right, no, it's a conversation, it's not a monologue. You have to be able to talk to one another, and, you know, you're essentially trying to put together a puzzle where none of the edges really meet, you know, and none of them fit together at all. But just by working together, you kind of shave it all down and miraculously, you know, make a final picture.
Can I piggyback on what Jim was talking
You
about?
guys don't have to
Being
ask,
hardworking.
you just
Just just don't say no unless you're really, you know, you're like terminal sick that day. Just always be available, always work hard. I remember there was a couple of times when I was in The Bachelor. Summertime is usually the busiest because Bachelor in Paradise is so much footage, and we would work sometimes 6 or 7 days. And you know, my boss came around just asking people, you know, who's more available this week or that week. And as soon as I opened my mouth, I said, Sean, I know you're available. I know you're doing. So just like, yeah, just be that person. Just, you know, always want to work hard and always try to be a part of the team, push.
Also, when you go in for that initial interview, don't lie. Just be honest. More than once, you know, we've interviewed people who said, oh, I can absolutely do this. No, it's not going to be a problem. And then they fail miserably. And they should have known that for whatever reason, this job wasn't a good fit. And I know it's hard to turn down work, but it's better just to be honest. And I'll give you an example. We had an editor on our last show who in the interview was like, listen, I'm just going to be upfront with you. I'm not the fastest editor, but I'm really good in this genre, and I guarantee you I'll get there by the end. And I hired him because he was honest. And you know what? He was great. It all worked out. He wasn't even that slow. He was lowering expectations. But the point was, you know, like, had he actually been slow and not told us in the interview, we might have got nervous when you get to that first cut. And he's like, you know, it's going to be, can I have one more day? You know, but we knew going in. So honesty is really important.
Oh, well, I was just going to emphasize the collaboration, and especially in reality TV, we don't just work with executive producers. We'll have teams of story producers that we have to work with first. And they're not always the most experienced. But you have to be able to work with that person and get the best footage from them that you need to make the scene the best it can. And so you have to kind of make them happy because they're trying to put together what she wants. And so it is truly a team effort. So have that pleasant personality, definitely be creative, of course, but be a good collaborator. That truly is the biggest part of what I do. And that's why I think it was easy for me to transition from teaching into this position as a television editor, because I could work with almost any personality type that walks in the door. I mean, I had to work with 30 adolescents at a time as a high school teacher. If I can handle puberty, I can handle producers.
Team player, that's the key. I have a history of being on shows or being at a company that has a lot of shows. For like, I was at Shed for 2 years, I was in The Bachelor for 1.5 years, I was at Ryan Seacrest for 8 months. I think just being a hard worker and just wanting to just help out, be a part of the team any way you can. Most of the time the work's divided, you know, throughout the night, and just, you know, before you leave, even if your work is done, check in with everyone else, see if there's anything else that you can pick up or help out with. So I think that's the key. And then later on, these relationships grow, and people are like, yeah, that guy, he stuck his neck out, and that's what they want to see.
I believe that's how Sean moved up when he was working with me, is he let me know, I'm interested in doing more. I wanna do more, I wanna contribute to this in a bigger way. And I think that's what got my attention and made me sort of like, okay, this guy's a go-getter, right?
Yeah. At first I thought, I was a little nervous because I'm like, I hope I'm not annoying her. I'm brand new, I'm new to LA, but Jen looked out for me. She looks out for everyone on Survivor, so.
And ask often, because you might get no the first
Yes,
time because
yes.
they're busy, they're in a hurry, or she's got 1,000 things on her plate and she can't. But ask often. Don't take the first answer if you don't get the answer you want.
That's true. But I would catch Jen wherever I can, at lunch or in the hall, and just like ask her what's coming up next, and so.
Can I say something kind of on the opposite end of that?
Please.
Because I think that when people are talking about these great personalities, and most of my superiors that I work for, they'll let you know I'm like one of the happiest, smiliest, joyful people ever, which I am. I love my job, I love what I do. But one thing that actually helped me out a lot is knowing that everybody has their quirks. So we work in a very stressful, great industry. It can be stressful, at times. But if you feel like you might not have the best personality, it's okay. Everybody has their quirks. Everybody has their days. Don't harp on it. Try to keep your positive vibes only. I live by that quote. But if you have a bad day, don't beat yourself up. So I just wanted to say that because I didn't want too much pressure on you guys.
Everybody's allowed to have a bad day. But I've been in situations where I've worked on a show where the lead assist was like, just kind of rude to the other assist and a know-it-all. And I was at a TV, and they actually got rid of that guy, got someone that was less experienced, but just more supportive of the team.
Sure.
So, you're allowed to have a bad day, but just, don't be a know-it-all, and, you all have to work together.
Right.
We work very long hours, so,
Well, that's another thing, it's a perfect segue. This is an industry that's almost prides itself on, killing ourselves with long hours and crazy deadlines and stuff. It's far from an ideal working environment, and it changes from show to show, right? It's not the same thing everywhere. Ninja is much easier than, other shows that I've had. It's stressful in its own ways, but it's much more, sedated and relaxed. How do you guys combat that? How on earth do you find a work-life balance in this situation? How in the world do you have 2 kids? Jen, you're a showrunner that's essentially in charge of sometimes pre-production and post. Why on earth would you take a job like that? And how do you actually have a life? How do you do it?
For me, I think I have to have a life. I got married, many, many years ago, 15 years ago, and had a child, and that life that I have is what refreshes me and makes me feel like I can put my all into this business. I mean, sure, it's very hard to balance those things, but it's what keeps me sane, and I think it's what keeps me from being a substance abuser or I've noticed that it gives me a lot of pleasure and relaxation to just go home and spend time with my family, and then I can really approach my job with fresh eyes. However, my family probably hates me, and I'm doing work all the time at home.
Good.
Yeah, work-life balance is definitely tough. I think we have 2 kids, but we were married for 11 years before we did that, and the reason was because we knew if we wanted to build a production company, it was going to be really difficult to do while we had kids. And I think no matter what area of the industry you're in, you have to ask yourself, what is going to make you happy at the end of the day? Really, truly happy. A lot of people picture themselves living in the mansion or having the private jets or whatever. You trade a lot to get that. If that's really where you want to end up being, you're going to be giving up a lot of stuff along the way. So for us, it's always been about being honest with each other and saying, how bad do we really want to do this show? Is this something we really want to develop? Is this something now that we want to take time away from our kids? And we talk about it, and you have to, because if you let it get away from you, time goes fast, especially once you have kids. Like, the years just start zipping by, and you don't want to miss those moments. So I think it's really important just to be honest with yourself. You know, are you a person that's going to have a family? Are you a person that's more career focused? And know why you make those decisions. Really think them through. I think it's something, a lot of people in this industry, we're all ambitious, right? That's why we got into it. But you get to a point when you get a little older where it's like, okay, how ambitious do I want to be, and what do I want to trade? How much of my quote unquote happiness do I want to trade for something that I think is going to make me more successful? And I don't think enough people talk about that in our business, but I think it's really important. I don't have the answer.
For me, to find the work-life balance is I try to work as many union shows as possible, especially in unscripted television. The hours can get really out of control, and they can on a union show as well, but at least I know I'm going to be compensated for it. So I can hire the dog walker that I might need. I can hire a meal delivery service if I need it. I can hire the fluff and fold. I can hire a housekeeper. So I do those things when needed, and without even questioning it, because my time is much more valuable than what I'm paying for those services, right? So that helps me keep my work-life balance a little better. And then, yeah, I'm very careful about what shows I choose to do, and especially union, because it is just more regulated, and they do have someone that they have to answer to. So I like that structure of a union show, personally.
That makes me really sad because I don't do a lot of union shows, and you guys are really good at it.
And the last time we worked together was her last union show. But I just, yeah, she's a great one to work with.
So we're obviously a long way from, you know, the original Real World and the original Survivor and stuff, especially now with this, you know, insane news cycle and the hyper-aware, everyone's hyper-aware of everything that's going on and everything that's, or suspect, they're suspicious of everything that's real and everything that's fake. We actually had a video on American Ninja Warrior. I don't know if I told you this. The video of Charlie hurting himself. One of our competitors, while we were filming, hurt himself really badly. Cracked his skull open by like slipping off like a foam roller or something. And people on the internet, the hardcore American Ninja Warrior Reddit, was insistent that the footage was faked, and that the sounds that we had of somebody screaming, "Charlie!" and like, "Call an ambulance!" They were, oh no, that's gotta be fake. That's gotta be, you know, they had to have put that in afterwards, which is interesting, because it's actually a real thing that actually happened. We really captured that.
I refused to watch the footage. I wouldn't watch it. Everyone told me about it, and I started to, and then I stopped it.
Yeah, no, it's not
I
good.
didn't cut that package, thank goodness.
So, I mean, here we are, how many, 30, 40 years, whatever, 30-something years after the you know, the real breakout of reality TV, and now we're on the flip side where stuff that's real looks fake. In this current environment, do you think the unscripted world has changed? Is it adapting? Or are networks kind of catching on? I know, Biagio, we talked, one of my favorite quotes from you, you said people's bullshit meters are much more kind of attuned nowadays, which I think is really interesting. Does it change, has it changed the types of shows that networks are trying to sell? Or is it just kind of business as usual, you know, the fake reality and everything else?
Well, I think it's cyclical, right? I mean, I think every network changes what they want at any given time. There's a major network that just had a big, you know, problem because they were doing a quote-unquote documentary series about a hate group, and it turned out producers paid people to basically stage a hate event and bought the supplies and everything. I mean, that's, you know, and that's about as far removed, I think, is from what people go to look for a documentary series as they can. I do think that people are much more attuned to what's real, and I think every show has its own contract with the audience, okay? So if you show up for Duck Dynasty, you're not showing up to watch a verite doc, right? If you show up for the first 48, you know they're not staging any of those, or they better not be staging any of those stories.
Right.
So I feel like within every show, the audience kind of comes to expect something different, and when you trick them, when it's not clear what your contract with the audience is, I think that's what people are starting to react to more and more.
But I think you're right. The world is just suspicious, period, because they think that we do things on the game show on Price is Right. You know, they think we fake things, and I'm like, no, we're not even allowed to fake things on a game show. There's specific rules. So I think no matter the genre, they're going to be looking like, oh, is that fake?
I've been getting that question most of my career, are these people real? Like, is that, they're real friends, and so I would constantly hear that all the time.
Well, working on brands like Project Runway and American Ninja Warrior, we have long-standing relationships with our contestants. We bring them back. We want them to come back. So we owe a certain amount of ethics to the work we're doing. I can't manipulate when they're talking about someone's outfit and just put in, have them say a different person's name, and now I've changed that comment to be about someone else's dress, and they said it about. So, and social media also plays into that, because they'll try to go on social media and say, oh no, they lied, I didn't really say that. So we're very aware of that with those brands in particular, and we want our contestants' loyalty. We want them to come back. We want them to be, they're part of our brand. Their social media becomes part of our brand as well.
We used to be able to do. We used to be able to.
Oh, I've done it too. I've manipulated things. I've had people say things they would never say in real, never really did. But I haven't done that in probably 7 years. I mean, it's been a long time. I think there's been a little bit of a move away from that.
Yeah.
But these are the people I work with.
I think the last time I did that was 10 years ago. I probably shouldn't say the show, but it was a scene that had already aired earlier in the season, and we literally took that footage, and we had to. There was no more shooting, so we had to make an episode. So we took that footage and only had them on camera for the little incidentals, and everything else underneath was a completely fabricated sound design conversation. So it would cut to them, you're like, oh yeah, and I was thinking, and then it went away, and we had a completely new conversation of a scene that had already aired, so anyone with any sort of sharp eyes would notice, oh yeah, he's in the corner over there, and that's weird. But yeah, that was 10 years ago, and I don't think you definitely can't get away with it nowadays. Everyone is so on top of it, and like Hawkeyes. Go ahead.
Most of these shows have almost a cult following.
Yeah.
People follow their Instagram and their Twitter, so yeah, it's kind of hard.
Well, also just the people on the shows now, even though they sign, agreements saying we're never going to talk about this or whatever, if you ask them to do something ridiculous, they're going to put it on social media.
Yeah.
It's going to get out, so you're going to get busted. So you have to be more real, which I think is great.
Yeah. No, totally. We have our I'm sorry.
Oh, and sorry, and networks are being a lot more accepting of this too. I don't know if that's your experience, but if you say that's not how they really feel, oftentimes they're accepting those answers a lot more than they were about 10 years ago.
Yeah, and if they don't, then you have your lawyers tell them.
We have our first question from the internets, which you guys could, are they tweeting, right? We're tweeting with the hashtag? Because you're the ranking officer over here.
Sure.
Have you guys ever kept something out of a show that was real because you thought the audience would think it's fake because it's so crazy?
If something's so crazy, we're going to put it in the show.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we'll figure out how to tease it for 4 acts.
Yeah.
It'll be great television. It'll be 4.5 seconds of content, but we will tease the hell out of it. So no.
I actually edited an episode, when I was making my transition to editor, they gave me an episode, and it just so happened that George Gray falls off the treadmill. And it was we were so excited. And of course, if there's ever a mistake, especially when we're modeling prizes, because a lot of them are promoted prizes, we'll do a pickup to fix that. And we did the pickup, but when we were editing it, my director was in the bay with me, and we're going to keep this on. So that was one time where we could have edited it out, but we chose to leave the funny in.
Oh, so it made it in the show?
It made it in the show, and it was
nice.
on ESPN, and I want to say TMZ, but I'm not too sure, but it was everywhere, George Gray falling off the treadmill. And that was one of those moments where people was oh, they staged that, they made him fall, and it's no, he could have gotten hurt. They could, thankfully he didn't, but yeah.
It's funny, people watch the shows that are staged, and they're wildly popular, but they'll harp on you for, oh, that must be staged. That's a nice little conundrum. Yeah. Oh. So Biagio, as someone who sells these shows, and your livelihood is sort of based on what shows you sell, or if they sell.
100%, yeah.
Is that an advantage? Do you think that's a skill that people should try to learn to be able to, to kind of pitch their own ideas? You're saying, producing your own material is the way to make it.
Yeah, so there's a couple of different ways to look at this. First of all, I will say if you love editing, man, editing is a great career. There's plenty of times my wife has said to me, maybe you should just go be an editor because there's plenty of job security, there's plenty of work. If you're good, you're going to work forever. You get brought back all the time. It's a great, it's a great career and there's a lot of job security. If you are one of those people who is interested in producing as well, I think editors, more than anyone else, even more than shooters, I think editors have really unique skills that can help them turn their concepts into real pitches. We actually do a podcast called Producing Unscripted. The whole podcast is just about how to break into unscripted television if you want to get at it from a producer's point of view. What's great is that when you're an editor, whether you're trying to pitch a follow doc or a game show or a comedy or whatever, you can go out, get halfway decent footage, and edit it into a really exciting tape that feels like a TV show. And believe me, that's better than 99% of the pitch tapes we and executives see all the time. I still see so many pitch tapes that I'm shocked are just what they are. Not coming out of big companies, but out of aspiring producers. So as an editor, I think you have a special skill set that can help you make really great tapes and get people excited. You don't even have to be that good in a room. I mean, honestly, a lot of times we went, especially early in our career, I was very shy in pitch meetings, and I just let the tapes do the talking, because once they played, or I let my wife do the talking, which was always the smart move. But a great tape can really take you a long way. So the thing about producing, though, you got to have a high tolerance for risk, right? My wife and I have 2 kids that we have in school. We got to save for their college. We got to pay for our house. We have to pay for our, we have to pay for our space. We've been in the same offices for almost 10 years now, right next to Universal Studios. Those are all costs that are on us. We're not funded. So our entire future is based on will Joke and I either create or meet somebody who we can collaborate with to create the next show that's going to support us. And that's scary as a production company. I think as an editor, if you're a full-time editor and you have a couple ideas for pitches, and there's production companies that are open to hearing your pitch, there's nothing wrong with pitching a show. Our show, MTV Caged, was pitched to us by a Buena Murray editor. His name was Travis Bible. Him and his partner Steve actually pitched to us. They both ended up, we got the show picked up, they both ended up working on it. Travis edited on it for months, so he got paid a little bit as a producer, a lot more as an editor, which again just proves editing is the way to go if you have a choice. But it was a great experience for him, and then he also didn't have the overhead or the worries about selling the next show. He could use that to launch other creative endeavors or go back to editing. So, I always encourage people, if you are interested in the producing side and you want to know how the industry really works, check out our podcast. And think about it. But know that you got to have a high tolerance for risk. So.
Jen, to bounce around between genres like you had, did you have to convince people that you could do it? I mean, the first time you try to branch out, how do you make someone believe that you can do something you haven't done before? I guess this is kind of a bigger issue where people are trying to break into the business, but you need experience in that business. You know what I mean? Which is weird. Like if I want to be a post-producer, they want you to have post-producing experience. So it's like, well, how the hell am I supposed to do that? How do you kind of navigate those waters? Or I know that's kind of 2 different questions, but
Yeah, it is, and I have 2 different answers.
Sure.
So in terms of trying to get into different genres, I lucked out. I would just target a specific genre and just apply for a lot of those types of jobs and go every direction. Do I know this person? Do I know this person? How do I get in and get a meeting with this new show I heard about? And I just lucked out, and people took chances because they knew that I had a good reputation. And sometimes you take a lower position just to get that experience. I was willing to take a lot of step downs just to get a specific experience that I wanted to add to my resume. And then the other question, what was it?
I'm sorry. What would you say to someone who's stuck in that rut where they're trying to bust into, let's say they're trying to bust into post?
And I can explain that with a story about myself. So when I first started in this industry, I came out here and I was bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and kind of took the first job that was offered to me, and it was a tape logger. And so I was logging tapes, and which was incredibly boring, but I learned a lot about, just post-production. And I shot up in the post-production sort of line of work, and I worked my way up very quickly to post-supervisor. And sort of thought, when I got there, I was like, yay, I'm finally making some decent money. But then I was like, wait, but I came out here because I'm a creative person and I want to do creative things. I'm making good money, but I don't want to be doing this. And I had to fight so hard by doing extra work outside my regular post-supervising job to convince people that I was capable of producing. So I just slowly and very slyly took on all these extra work, extra situations that no one wanted to do on a show. I was like, oh, website producer, I can do that. Oh, you want some help? And I did it for free. And I just kept staying and kept taking on more and more and more until I was doing so much that someone was like, hey, wait a minute. You're kind of doing a lot and you're doing a really good job at it. So let's just give you a producer job. And actually, I made it from post-super to supervising producer, which is pretty much impossible to do. But I just proved that I was insanely crazy and passionate about storytelling and being creative. I proved that I could do the job for free.
You did it. I mean,
Yeah.
that's 100% the way you do it. You have to let people know you want it, and you have to prove you can do it. I mean, that's awesome. Yeah, supervising producer. Woo!
Yeah, when I was assisting on the Real World, one of the tasks that we would have to do is cut together things like anytime Dr. Pepper was in the show, and then we would send that off to Dr. Pepper, for example. And so no editor wants to cut that stuff, but the assistant editor was so eager to do it. And, I had fun with it, and I could put music in there and make a fun montage of all the Dr. Pepper shots, and I just would take on those kinds of tasks. And that was after hours, generally. They weren't a union show, so it really didn't matter. But, that's really the way you have to do it, and you show them that you can. They're not going to risk their schedule, their money on bringing someone in who can say they can do it, but they haven't seen it. So at least if you have something to show them, you're good.
And if you do it for free, they're all for that.
Like I eventually made my way over to editing from an assistant editor. They started giving me credit beds to cut first on the show Wife Swap. It was usually like a bloopery type of thing or something funny that happened. And they liked them. They thought they were really funny. So little by little, they started dishing off, actual scenes to the assistant editor that they didn't have to pay as an editor.
Right.
But it was a great opportunity, and it was literally what made them notice me, and what made them notice that I wanted a career in editing. Which is another important point too. I think some people are afraid to ask for help or ask for advice, or come to you and be like, hey, how did you do this? Like, what's this relationship like? And I think the message here is just don't be afraid to ask. Try to establish relationships with people. Don't come out of the gate with a resume in your hand and be like, hey, can you get me a job on this? Try to establish a friendship with people. Just shoot the shit about the world, about real life. Hey, talk to me about that job. I'm interested in doing this. Let people know. Let the world know what you're trying to do. And eventually, I think people are really willing to help people just coming up in the business. Personally, at least that's what I feel like. I think people are a little scared to ask for help or ask for advice.
I think people want to recognize, they recognize passion, and if you're passionate about storytelling or about editing and I know that's storytelling as well, but I mean, if you're passionate about those things and they see that passion, they're going to recognize that.
Right.
There's just no one way of just getting in, and you may not want to stay wherever you're at the time. I remember when I first got started, I was an intern, VH1 and MTV when I was a PA, and then I worked at a dub house for a couple of years, and that wasn't really what I wanted to do.
Right.
And then I took the leap and came out here. So I've met quite a few people that started off with me as loggers and transcribers, and some of them became story producers, and some of them they originally wanted to be editors. So you just never know. Just take whatever job that you can start off just because you want to work in the industry,
Right.
and just try to learn as much as you can and see where it takes you.
Can I just talk about just cover letters for a second?
Yeah, you can talk about whatever you want.
So there's a site called Staff Me Up that we use occasionally. Different places we can put out job postings. And, you know, you get so, being on the hiring side, you see so many submissions that you almost reject out of hand because there's either like a really ridiculous cover letter that's clearly just been pasted into every single submission they sent out. Sometimes they're applying for something, they don't even know what they're applying for, they have no experience related to it. But the ones that stand out, and they're so few and far between, but it's so simple. Is like, instead of just blasting out the thing 1,000 times, take 3 minutes to Google the company that's posted the job, and just write a couple of sentences as a show you've done your research. I noticed you've done a few shows in the genre, you know, it's a genre I'm really interested in as well. List your experience and just personalize it. Like, just doing that, like, Jen talked about Sean being a go-getter, right? Like, that shows that you're a go-getter. It shows that you're out there, you're the kind of person who's going to pay attention and go the extra mile to get something. So those are the people that always end up on our action list. And I've called in people who did not have a lot of experience, but took the time to write us that letter. Some of them we hired, some of them we didn't. Some of them worked out, some of them didn't, but that's all part of the process. So I just really encourage you, if that's the way you're trying to get in, if you're like, I'm going to go and, you know, I'm going to apply for these jobs and staff me up, just take the 3 minutes. Don't send out that mass cover letter, because almost everyone does. I'm telling you by the number of submissions you get.
Dude, even when you have experience, when I crossed over to Scripted, I really didn't know too many people, so I would just cold hit up people on the guild, and I would take that time to write. I think I've submitted over 30 resumes, but in 30 cover letters, and I same as you said, I looked up the company, and I also looked at the person to see if we had any friends in common. And I took the time, and it literally took me hours and days because because if you personalize it, then people will see that, you know, you're just not another person just trying to get in to their show. Like, you really are passionate about what you're doing, and hopefully you could bring something different, you know, to the team. You know, they want to see that. So yeah, it's a lot of work, but it's worth it. Out of the 30, 1 or 2 posts got back to me, and things just started just snowballing that way.
Yeah, and also your resume, don't be afraid to have different versions of your resume if you're one of these multi-hyphenate talented people. Okay, if I'm looking for a cinematographer, I don't want to get a resume that's like editor, cinematographer, blah, blah, blah. But that same person could just put the resume together that focuses on their cinematography, and then find a way to mention tastefully in the bottom they've also done a lot of editing which they feel makes them a better cinematographer, or vice versa. And now all of a sudden I feel like this is someone who's really coming in for the job I'm asking for, as opposed to someone who's just got a hodgepodge of experience. Your experience will always help you get a job. Your experience in other areas of filmmaking, but highlight the important stuff. You know, put that, you know, so you can have. I have a friend actually who had